Metro newspaper, which is a free paper given away in the UK, used to have a section in which a celebrity would select 6 albums they would recommend to other people. And this has always stuck in my mind, so I have done my own one. So these are not popular albums that everyone knows. You will probably have never heard of these, or if you are quite into your music, then you may know some of them, but I'm sure one or two of them will have escaped your notice, or if you do know of their existence, you dismissed them or didn't pay any further attention beyond recognising that yes, this band does exist. So I've had a think about the 6 obscure bands who I would recommend, and 7 names came to mind. So I'm going to stretch it and have 7 instead of 6, and I will do it in alphabetical order. So the first one is Art Brut, a British band who do almost comedy music. The lyrics are overtly amusing. Lots of references to making mixtapes and listening to music. I think the guy has done multiple songs about Axl Rose. It's overtly comical and it is amusing, and it's not a punny one-liner kind of humour, which obviously in music gets very, very tired and boring and loses its humour on the 5th listen. This band has about 5 or 6 albums, and I listen to them all the time, and I have not grown bored of them. The humour has not grown stale. The singer's voice is definitely an acquired taste. His voice is not what anyone would consider to be a good, straightforward, traditional singer. It is a peculiar, one-of-a-kind singing voice. But he can carry a tune, and it works with the lyrics. If he was fronting a more conventional band, it might be a bit of a stretch, but doing this sort of comedy music, the music itself is not funny. You know, they're not doing funny sound effects or anything with the guitar or whatever. So the humour comes more from the lyrics and the singer's delivery of those lyrics and the backing vocals as well. The music itself is pretty straightforward, indie rock, unremarkable. There's no amazing melodies, there's nothing especially great about the music, but the singer has charisma. He's one of those one-of-a-kind oddball talents that the British music industry in particular has a tendency to throw up, and he is definitely one of those oddball talents. And I think his name is Eddie Argos, and he's really good. I really like him. I like his voice, I like his lyrics, and his lyrics and his voice work well with this simple, straightforward meat and potatoes indie rock, and the whole thing comes together and is more than the sum of its parts. So the album I would recommend by Art Brut, and I believe Art Brut means outsider art, is their debut, Bang Bang Rock and Roll. All of their other albums are good. There's not a bad album. People are a wee bit iffy on album number 2. I think it's called It's a Bit Complicated. It is considered to be a bit of a dip, but and I agreed with them when I first heard it. I thought, this is a bit disappointing, but you keep listening to it, it works, it's fine. In fact, it's really good. It's actually a very good album. I have zero issues with it. It just takes a few listens for it to go from that's a bit disappointing to no, actually that's a very strong, powerful album. So Art Brut is a band who are really well worth giving a listen to, especially their debut, which is just a really powerful, effective album. It's also worth noting that Black Francis, the lead singer and main songwriter of the Pixies, he produced some of these albums. So there is an association there between Art Brut and the Pixies. My second choice, in alphabetical order, is a Canadian goth metal hard rock band called Blood Ceremony. They are peculiar in that they have a flute as a main instrument. Sometimes where you would normally stick a great big guitar solo, there is instead a flute. Now, Jethro Tull is about the only band who uses a flute and got away with it. Well, this band uses a flute and it gets away with it. Somehow it works. It all sounds good, it all sounds like heavy, hard rock. And the lyrics are very Aleister Crowley, 70s. They are a very 70s throwback band. There's a definite recreation of Black Sabbath, a pinch of Led Zeppelin, very 70s hard rock, a wee bit of Deep Purple, but the songwriting is strong and it's all very up-tempo. They don't really seem to do any slow songs, but they do have dynamics. The songs will shift in pace and texture throughout, so the album I am recommending, I believe, is from 2011 and it is called Living with the Ancients, and there are no down-tempo songs on it. There's a lot of forward momentum, up-tempo hard rock, but it doesn't become samey sounding because there are dynamics within the songs, so the songs ebb and flow. They have their quieter bits and they slow down a wee bit here and there. So it's a very good band, and that album in particular it's just really forward momentum, battering ram, 70s style, prog tinged heavy rock. Very good band and certainly well worth investigating if you like 70s hard rock. I think as far as throwback bands go, they don't take the piss. They're not just recreating the past. There is something there that's more than some of its parts. It's not just a Black Sabbath recreation. There is some extra substance, some extra X factor to make it more than the sum of its parts. If you like goth rock, then you should get a lot out of Blood Ceremony. The third band is Braids. This is another Canadian band, and I discovered them by reading a review of their first album called Native Speaker in Q magazine, and the review was positive, gave it 4 out of 5 if I recall correctly, and there was a small interview sidebar beside the review, and I was intrigued by the fact that they recorded the album for, I don't know, say $500 or $1,000. All they had to do was rent some microphones or something and that was about it. And they spent like 9 months recording this, and what was particularly interesting was that their point of reference of where they started from was so unusual and different from everyone else. Everyone else, it's the Beatles, it's Led Zeppelin, it's whoever the standard issue reference points is, but their start point was an album called Fails by Animal Collective. And because of this band, Braids, I had a look at Fails by Animal Collective, and it did nothing for me. I couldn't see any interesting elements to it. It did zero for me, and I very quickly bailed on Fields. But it's just very fascinating to me to have a band that has as their this is the culmination of what great music is, and we want to recreate this thing that we discovered. And it's not the Beatles, it's not the Beach Boys, it's something totally left field, and I find that to be really fascinating. And it means that the music is more creative and original because it's not just recreating the same old stuff. So I got the album and I was very disappointed. Oh, this is quite boring. This is really uneventful and annoying and quite boring. I like it's got a kind of a glassy, glacial feel to it. It's very semi-ambient. It's atmospheric, but it's just not very interesting. I'm kind of bored. I don't really like this. And almost out of perversity, I kept at it. I was oddly fascinated by it, and I thought, I don't know why, but I'm coming back to this again and again and again. And I hammered that album quite heavily for, say, a month. And then slowly I went from, I don't like this is underwhelming, to this is really, really good. And after, say, a month of heavy listening, it's a case of, that was awesome, that is a great album. That I don't like the title track. It's the longest track, it's about 8 minutes or something, and it's a bit too ambient, doesn't really go anywhere, but I think the rest of the album is really strong. The best track is the opening track, it's the most pop track, I think it's called Lemonade. That's the single. It's an album that asks a lot of the listener. It doesn't just present its pleasures up front. Here you go. All you have to do is listen to this once or twice and then you get it. No, you have to listen to Native Speaker something like 20 times before it goes from that's not very good to that's awesome. But it's an album that repays your effort tenfold. I just adore that album, and it's well worth the effort. If you can stick with it, if you can develop a taste for it, it will repay that effort in spades. I described the sound of the band as, imagine metal era Pink Floyd from 1971 doing the big long ambient tracks like Echoes, got together with The Cure to write songs, and then the Penguin Cafe Orchestra came in and recorded the songs. That's what Braid sounds like. The subsequent albums are not as good, but they are a very interesting, worthwhile band, and certainly I would recommend you check them out. The first album is quite impenetrable and mysterious to begin with, but stick with it and it does become something that warms up, and it becomes a lot easier to grasp what it is they were trying to do. It opens up and becomes a much more understandable, straightforward album, although it does retain some sort of mystery to it. The second album, that one though is very cold, very brittle. That to me is the key word, brittle. And it really never does open up and become warmer and become more conventional and easy to understand. It to this very day remains pretty much impenetrable to me, but I actually think that's its strength. It has integrity. It's certainly not a pop album. It's not a pop album that's trying to make you like it. It has an attitude of like it or lump it. We are not doing anything to change it and make it easier to digest and understand. And you can't help but admire its bloody-minded brittleness